Hello. Welcome to First in the Family, a podcast that explores the world of breaking generational chains, patterns, and practices due to access, education, will, or sheer bravery. We celebrate, honor, and grieve the ways that these accomplishments, changes, new pathways, whatever they may mean to you, we celebrate, honor, and grieve the impacts, the joy, the discomfort, the liberation, and the pain that come with them. My name is Cecy, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Lolita Jackson. She is the Executive Director of Sustainable Cities at Sustainable Development Capital LLP, and she is the link to governments around the world, Conference of the Parties, the United Nations, and climate and business network engagement, as well as business development. Previously, Lolita worked for the New York City Mayor's Office for 15 years in a variety of roles, including the Special Advisor for Climate Policy and Programs, the Deputy Director of External Affairs for the New York City Housing Recovery Office, the Director of Outreach for the New York City Special Initiative for Rebuilding and Resiliency, that was the post-Hurricane Sandy resilience team, and the lead for operational city agencies for the Second Avenue Subway and Barclays Center construction projects. For those of you who are New Yorkers, you know that all of these projects were big ticket items. Prior to going into the mayor's office, Lolita worked for Morgan Stanley Investment Management for 12 years as a vice president and helped manage a $10 billion product line. Woo-wee. Lolita is also the Woke Family Visiting Fellow at Penn Perry World House, a global think tank in the areas of climate diplomacy and climate finance. I don't think I know what either of those two things are. She's a member of the British American Project U.S. Advisory Board, a fellow of the U.S.-Japan Leadership Program, a trustee and executive committee member of the Jazz Museum in Harlem, and she was awarded Member of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II in 2021. She's the real deal, y'all. I'm very excited to introduce you to Miss Lolita Jackson. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Miss Lolita Jackson. Now, I have to ask, first of all, I think it's Dame Lolita Jackson. Is that right?
No.
Oh,
Sadly,
damn it.
no. When you're an American, you don't get a title. Only people who are British or British Commonwealth actually get titles. But I always say Dame Sings a Lot is my nickname for me.
I love it. I love it. I was totally Googling it. I was like, man, I can't screw this up. So for those of you who are confused, Lolita is a member of the Order of the British Empire. And that was designated by Queen Elizabeth II. Was it last year or the year before?
2021. So I was one of the last classes before she passed away.
Wow, what an honor. Well, yes. I'm still going to call you madam because I don't know any better. And that sounds pretty damn cool. So thank you for joining us. Sure. I'm so excited. So I just read your bio to our listeners. And I think my head was spinning when I read through it because I was like, wow, I don't even know what half the words meant, to be honest with you. I was like, climate diplomacy, climate finance, climate. I was like, oh man. I gotta brush up on my climate work before I'm able to understand all of this. How's that work going for you? I know it's a new field, right?
It's great because it's the Wild West. I love being part of something that is evolving. We're building a plane as we're flying it. I mean, just there's so much activity, so much movement, $369 billion committed by the US government.
Wow.
With the Ukrainian war, sadly, that has accelerated activity. So all over the world, people are trying to figure out new technologies or efficiently using the old technologies. And I'm in the middle of it. I mean, my nickname for myself is Climate Oprah because it's like there's so many convenings around climate and opportunities to speak about it. And I'm a very good moderator. So I'm always asked to kind of come in and sort of demystify what people are hearing and talking about. And I love that role. So.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, I'm currently on the job search in the nonprofit world. And I swear out of every 10 jobs I see, half of them are climate related. And I was telling my husband, I was like, wow, this is the new frontier.
It is.
It's
and
amazing.
Even with undergraduate students, I went to Penn as I'm sure we'll get into during our conversation. And nobody cared about the engineering school. Like we were like the nerds, the geeks, like, oh, you're corny, you're in engineering. Now the children of my contemporaries, all of them are applying to engineering school. I'm the only person they knew in school who did it. So I'm the one connecting them and telling them there's careers that you can do that are not specifically just being an engineer. And I'm an example of that. So I went from being, as I call the booty crew, to the in crowd. So it's
I love
really,
it.
that's been actually a big mental change for me because I was always involved with stuff that people really weren't into. And then all of a sudden I happened in 3 different points of my career to be in the place that people cared about at that moment in time. So I feel very fortunate with that. Even when I was on Wall Street, the thing I did on Wall Street, nobody really talks about anymore, but at the time was making the most money for the entire company. So I just feel very fortunate that I landed because of being open to opportunity and things that maybe other people would say no to. I would say yes. And that has propelled me to where I am today. And, as we'll talk about, I'm probably 0.001% of somebody from my background ending up like this. And I don't take it for granted.
Wow. Wow. So you just make stuff cool, don't you?
Well, I just, like I said, I'm open and I also let people know what I can do. I don't hide my own light. I used to, but now I don't.
Yeah.
And I made the analogy to my CEO the other day. I said, I have 6 pitches. If I'm Mariano Rivera. So if I'm on the Yankees that had Derek Jeter and Bernie Williams, all these people, they could field the ball, they could slide into home plate. I can't do any of that. Put me in for 6 pitches, I will win you the game, but don't ask me to slide into the bases. Don't ask me to field the ball. Ask me to do what I'm good at, and I will be the best at it. Do not have me doing other things. And he totally got it. He's like, okay, this is pitch number 5. Here we go. And so we went down, had a conference with people from the White House. So now I was very clear to him what I'm here for. And I feel like a lot of us are afraid to do that because we feel like we have to know everything everybody else knows. Yeah. No, just do the thing you're good at and do that well and be willing to go outside the lines. Yeah. But don't try to go way over here when you haven't mastered what you're there for in the first place.
That's such wise words. I was talking to my therapist the other day about how much I was the opposite, right? I always wanted to make sure that nobody bested me, that I knew what every room was talking about, that I could partake in any conversation. And so I was just like always trying to like read up on everything and do this and get good at that. And now I've come to a point in my life where, like, first of all, that's exhausting. And second of all, I don't think I can say like I'm the, 6 pitches. Like I think I'm unclear as to like which are my superpowers, which are the things that like I did because I thought you were supposed to do that, which are the things I'm passionate about. So I'm in this stage in life now where I'm just trying to like take inventory, I think, of all those different categories. And it's not easy.
Right. Because you really have to look inside yourself and say, what is that thing I really wish I was good at, but I'm just not. And I keep trying to do it, but I'm not. Maybe I need to give that up. And that's the hardest thing to do. I'm 55 years old. I promise you the things that are coming out of my mouth now, even 7 years ago, were not coming out then. It took me going through some life changes, going through some health issues. Like my time here is not promised. I almost died after an operation. And it wasn't even the operation. It was the aftermath of the operation where I was in the hospital 11 days instead of 2. And I was like, okay, it's not guaranteed I'm here. I need to reassess how I'm thinking about myself and what I'm doing here and how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. So I've done a lot of reassessing in the last few years based on those things.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you for shedding some of those wise words today, because I'm going to soak them all in. So this is a podcast for the masses, but really I'm trying to like get the secret cheat codes to life. So I want to dive into why you're here today. You already alluded to it, the 0.0001%, right? I feel that 100%. That's really what this podcast is all about, right? Being the first in the family to do things. I was on another interview, and I was telling my guests that there's so many firsts that have happened. There's like big firsts, right? Like first to go to college and first to buy a house, that kind of thing. But I don't realize the like small firsts, right? Like I was telling her, I think I was the first to pay painters, right? Like ever in my entire lineage to paint my house, right? I didn't know who to call, where to start, what's a good price, what's a bad price, right? And it was just completely elusive. And that it's just so interesting how that can happen once you take your first, right? And it just becomes this like trickle effect. So I asked you to fill out a questionnaire, and you let us know that you were the first in the family to graduate from college, first to go to an Ivy League university, first to shift socioeconomic status, and first to decide not to have kids. So that's a lot, just right there. And I'm sure if we unpacked it, and we will today, there's probably like 1,000 other firsts, right, that stemmed from all of those firsts as well. So first of all, congratulations. Truly, truly, you are inspirational and a badass. So thank you for being here. I'm very excited to connect on all of these firsts. I hope you get time to celebrate all of the amazing achievements that you have, because they're truly, truly exceptional and remarkable.
Thank you.
So let's go through some celebration. Now, you mentioned that you were the first to go to college, that you also the first to have financial freedom. Mm-hmm. Now, tell us a little bit about your background. Why was it so rare? Where did you come from? And what was it like to become the first to even graduate from college?
Sure. So I was born to my mother, unfortunately, was mentally ill, and she had been diagnosed before she was pregnant with me and stopped taking the medications while she was pregnant with me, which unfortunately caused cascading a relapse into what was wrong. And she had to be committed off and on for the rest of her life after I was 6 months old. Mm-hmm. So she was unable to care for me. And my father was not in the picture. So I was sent to live with my grandmother. And even though the rest of the family was pretty much working class, who could kind of like, pay their bills and do what they needed to do, we were in public housing. So New Jersey has, 2% public housing in all towns. So even, or at least affordable housing in all towns. So even if the town is wealthy or middle class, there's still a section of every town that is not. I lived there. And so I lived in a place that was not poor, but I was poor. I'm also 55 years old. So I was the first class that was part of busing in 1972. So I was bused from the Black part of town where all the project kids lived like me to the white part of town. But the issue with that is that the school system, but before that, the kids in that particular school were entirely white except for one Black family. And so there's 50 Black kids coming in. I happened to be the smartest, one of the smartest, two smartest kids in the entire school. I was also the poorest kid probably in the entire school. The teachers were not prepared for that. So I would take a standardized test. They used to call the California Achievement Test back then, but let's say it's a standardized test. I'd be done like 15 minutes early with the math section and just sit around, look around, and I'd get like a 99 or 100, but they probably never gave anybody 100, so they say 99. And so the teachers like didn't know what to do with that. To like her grandmother has a 4th grade education, so she's not getting help at home. I was really good at math, and it was like a language to me. It made complete sense. But the teachers were not prepared to deal with smart Black children. So that started sort of the through line of not being encouraged or even told how bright you are. And my grandmother unfortunately died when I was 15 years old. Thankfully, I had aunts and uncles in the same town. I didn't have to move like a complete high school, but I was a ward of the state at that point, kinship foster care, they call it. And I was like, I have no backstop. So I'm not ever trying to be poor or broke again or on welfare again. I'm not any of these people's kids, even though they're moms and uncles. I was not their child. And that was clear to me. I was not their child. So I'm like, okay, I have to figure out how I'm going to get out of here and not go back to living in the projects. So
wow. So you knew that early on.
Oh, yeah. When I was in 9th grade, I was like, I got to go to good college because I got to pay my own way because she's not good. I knew she wasn't going to be alive much longer. I didn't know what was going to happen the next year. But I was like, okay, I got to have my activities right. So I can apply to certain schools because it can't just be grades. So I took German for 4 years of high school. I was a concert level, orchestra level bass clarinet player. I played field hockey and I was the goalie. Like I knew you had to play a sport. Like I do all of those things as I wanted to prepare myself for the types of schools I knew need to get into. And no offense to Rutgers or any state school, but I knew from my background, the only way I was going to get the kind of job I needed was to go to a really good school because I could connect to people who might be able to help me. So I knew all of that in 9th grade. I know it's God because there's no reason for me to have known all those
I
things.
was
But
just
did.
about to say, who gave you the cheat
No.
codes? Because nobody
No, no,
taught
no.
ninth grade
No.
stuff, all that.
I promise you it was God because there's no other reason for me to know all those things. So
Wow.
anyway, point being, I got into 3 Ivy League schools. And the interesting part of the story is that, you know, as I said, I was one of the poorest kids in school, even though I was, by the time I got out of high school, I was middle class. People knew where I came from because it's the same school system forever. They knew I grew up in Parkside apartments, even though I lived now in a house with 4 bedrooms. And I was the only black kid. I was the only kid, excuse me, in my school that got into Yale, and I chose not to go. Everybody's mad at me. They're like, well, you only got it because you're black. I'm like, I got the same grades as you did. What are you talking about? So that also taught me a lesson is like, everybody's cool with you until you get something that they wanted.
Oh.
Right. So I'm like, okay, you invited me to your pool. You thought I was cool. Your parents liked me. But now you applied to something that I got and you assumed you were going to get it. You didn't. And I did. So I must have taken it from you rather than I'm better or as good as you.
Right.
And so that taught me a lesson very early on in life as well, that I really was on my own. So took all of that background. I was like, I'm going to go to Penn. I'm going to try to do my best there. And Penn saved my life. So people always wonder why I spend so much time and energy giving back to Penn. I helped raise $1 million with some others, an initiative that is scholarship money for current students who live in the Black dorm. Well, it's not a Black dorm anymore, but Black themed dorm, I should say, or African-American themed dorm called W.B. Du Bois House. We raised $1 million. It was almost all Black alumni under 40. We were under 40 at the time. We raised that money because I said, I don't want people who come in after me to have to deal with the things that I dealt with when I was there regarding lack of funds and lack of support. They now Penn First Plus, which is amazing. So all of my philanthropy for Penn now goes to that because I want somebody who doesn't have enough food to eat at the end of the semester, or they need a plane ticket to go back to visit their parents for an emergency. I want them to have that money to do that because we did not.
Yes.
And so even though I came into Penn and I had a great experience as far as socially and meeting people who are my best friends today, it was a struggle financially. And it was a big shock to get in there and get acclimated. So while I enjoyed my time, my first semester, I was kind of blown out by a lot of things that happened. And so that's the backstory to get me to sort of where I got to Penn. But so my growing up was rough because I was bullied. I was teased for being smart because back then it's like, oh, you try to be white. I'm like, I like the police. Everybody likes the police, right? But back then, we try to be white if you like the police, you know, the group.
That's a music band for our young folks.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. The police, Sting before Sting was in the police. Just to be clear. But my point is, now because of the way the music business is, white people listen to rap, Black people listen to metal. None of that was happening when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. You listened to Black music or you listened to white music, and that was it because that was before MTV. That was before the things that allowed people to sort of mix and mingle with their musical tastes. And so because I was always an omnivore with life, not just with music, but I hang out with everybody. And that's what everybody does now. But that, just please understand, that was not common even in the university space. If you were Black and went to Penn, you were in a Black fraternity sorority, or you were kind of cut off, right? So I'm like, I'm not pledging anything because I have lots of friends who are Black and white. But what's happened over time, people's children go to college and they're like, I'm not living like that. I'm pledging Sigma Chi and I'm Black, or I'm, white and I might pledge Alpha. So their whole experience was my experience 30 years ago. So some people have come back to me and apologized for things they've done and said to me. Other times people just realize the utility and the growth they can get by meeting other people. I'm now the president of my class. I was not when we graduated, but I'm the president now after the 25th because they recognize I was the one person who actually did know everybody and socialized with them when they were 18 years old. I've helped people come together for jobs and business opportunities. There's people who have met and become good friends, but they didn't talk in school. And so for me, I'm the same person I was 35 years ago. And I'm just trying to bring people to understand why that was valuable then, but it's never too late.
Wow. So Lolita, you're an orphan coming out of Jersey, living in public housing, smartest kid, one of the smartest, but I'm going to say smartest kid in your class. Teachers are not acknowledging that. Teachers are not even prepared, like you said, for smart Black children, right? To support that, to encourage that, to develop that. You get through school, you said by God. Can you talk to us about what that actually felt and looked like? What was it, something spiritual? Were you praying every night? Like, what was it that kept you not only knowing sort of like, all right, I got to get the right sports and the right activities, but even before then, what was it that kept you motivated to continue? How were you connecting with this spiritual side that allowed you to navigate these brand new foreign worlds with such tenacity and such wisdom?
When I was 8 years old, first of all, I've always been religious. I've always been a believer. And I used to go to church every Sunday. I was very involved in the church. And when I was 8 years old, I got a vision that I was going to live in New York City. And this was when in 1975,
Wow.
when New York was not the place you wanted to be. Literally, that was the year I think that Drop Dead happened from Gerald Ford,
Hmm.
or to Gerald Ford from the mayor. So I remember having a dream that I was going to be in front of a lot of people and I was going to be in New York and I was going to be doing something involved with the church. And I said this to my family at Thanksgiving the next day, it was the next day or 2 days later, and they all kind of freaked out because I used to see things before they happened. And I was just very in tune with
Whoa.
my religiosity. Oh yeah, like I was very, very strong. And so I
That's a
got this
gift.
note, this like sort of word from God to me that said, I'm going to get you out, but you have to listen.
Mm.
So I had to
Ooh,
follow whatever thread was put in front of me. I had to just follow that thread and listen
ooh.
to what it was. And so
I'm
it
gonna
meant that I
get you
didn't
out,
drink
but you
a
have
drop
to
of
listen.
alcohol until I got out of high school. I didn't even really date anybody in high school. I never, had sex before I got out of high school. Like I was like, I need to get out of here. And I had cousins who got waylaid because they got pregnant or they smoked weed or they did whatever. And I'm like, I can't even try any of those things because if I do,
Mm.
that might get me off the path because God said he's going to get me out, but I can't do that stuff until I'm out.
Wow.
And so that was the message that was just a through line for me through all that, sort of tumult and getting bullied and getting teased or whatever. Cause it was like, all right, well, I'm not going to be here at one point and then I can just leave all y'all behind. That's kind of what happened. So, interesting enough, I made the joke because I was a class officer that whole time though. And so I made in high school and I made the joke that I'm now invited to parties. I'm now hosting parties for my classmates in high school that I was never invited to.
Mm.
Like the after party for our 25th reunion for high school was in my hotel room. Like I wouldn't have been invited to this party in,
Wow.
1984. So it's just, this is why I don't hold any, resentments, revenge, whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
life kind of circles around and, my time was not then. And had I
Mm.
been more integrated into those things, I may not have gotten out. I
Mm.
may not have, maybe I would have chosen to go to Rutgers around the corner. So I'd be with my high school friends. I wanted to
Right.
go somewhere where nobody knew me. And that's
Mm.
what I did. And that's why I went to Penn. I got a full ride to Rutgers. I said, I'd rather $40,000 in loans than go to school right here because I need to get out and I need to have my own way and my own path. And I've done that. So,
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna get you out, but you have to listen. I love
yep,
that. I
yep,
feel
yep,
like God tries to knock that over people's
yep,
heads all the time, and we
yep,
go, I got this.
yeah,
It's good. I'm gonna take it
yeah,
from here, God. It's all
yes.
good.
And it was clear as a
Uh,
bell. It's like, I will get you out of here, but you cannot mess up.
right.
Please
You
don't mess
gotta
this up. I'm
follow.
giving you the chance. I'm giving you the lifeline, but you got to take it. And so I listened.
Mm.
Now there's times after that that I have not listened and I've gone
Right.
off course. But at that moment in my life, I knew that was my only shot because my
Wow.
family actually was fairly tight, but I
Yeah.
was an other, right? Because real smart, always wanted to read the books. I wasn't that cute. I had connected dot acne. I've come from a very good looking family and I was not a good looking kid, which again, that's
Mm.
probably God saving me from other things that were happening. So I was just very different than everybody around me and my cousins and my generation. So even within the family, there was some stress about that. And also I was the only one that was not living with a parent.
Mm.
And then when she died, it was like, okay, well, who's going to take her? Like it was a whole thing. And I was like, you feel like almost a commodity, like, well, who's going to take her? So
Mm.
how do you feel at a 15-year-old? Like nobody even, some people want me and they're not allowed to have me. There was a fight about where I was going to live because my grandmother said I
Mm.
couldn't live with a person and that person wanted me, like all kinds of stuff. And that's a hard age to deal with that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I don't know where I'm going or where I'm living, but once I get there, I just got to focus on school, focus on my
Yeah.
extracurriculars and those applications to college because I could
Wow.
see the end was near. It happened just the right time. We only had 2 years left, and I'm like, okay, I just got to keep pushing. And you
Wow.
may remember, and I don't know if this happened when you got your acceptance letters, but back then they were all the same day. April 15th, everybody found out for the
Mm.
IBs the same day, all of them.
Yeah. I don't
So,
remember. I don't think
yeah,
that's the way it was.
that may have stopped by the time you
Okay.
got out in school. But back in the 80s, all the schools told you the same day, as well as
Wow.
MIT and Stanford. So in my high school, they put a board. So the school found out when you found out, and they put a board and they put the person's name and the schools they got into. I hadn't told people I applied to all these schools. So when the next day they come in, they see Lolita Jackson, Yale, Columbia, Penn. I mean, everybody lost their minds because
Wow.
I hadn't told them, and they just never assumed that Lolita in the corner with no money was the one that was going to get in all these schools. And
Wow.
so I know I'm kind of going off track a
No,
little bit.
I love it. I love it.
But the point is, God filled me with that. So I was like, of course I'm going to get into these schools. Like I actually, believe it or not, had really no doubt that I was going to get into at least one or two of them because I felt like God had told me that. So now what I do with that and what I did with that, and after that, that was on me. But he's like, I'm going to get you to the starting line. And that's what he did.
Incredible. Incredible. Now, you talk about being bullied, being teased, having sort of feeling like this commodity being moved around your family, maybe even a burden, right?
Right.
How did you, I'm not hearing resentment or contempt or frustration in your telling of this story. Was that present throughout these years? I mean, you're a teenager.
Yes.
How did you work through all of that? I mean, because I'm like getting upset for you. I'm like, they said what to you? They didn't invite you to which party? How did you work through that?
It was hard because at the time, I'm going to be honest, the relative that I did get moved with, I think that, she was going through a phase in her life where this was not something she was looking forward to. So we had a very, not great relationship, and, other relatives have acknowledged that I was challenged through that. People didn't say anything to me at the time, but they saw it. And so it was hard. So, it was like, I wanted to spend as much time in school as possible because I didn't want to go home. Right. So, I did as many activities as I could, and also had a part-time job on top of all this. So I had to pay for all of my, the application were $80. Now you can apply online, everything's free. It was $80 per school. And you had to mail it in and all that. I did all that myself.
I remember that.
So some of them I got waived, but other ones I didn't. So I had to, my money, even though it was money coming in from the state for me, that was not coming to me to pay for those things. So that's why I say I knew from jump, I was like, I'm on my own. I'm not any, I'm like a boarder. I might as well just be like, a person off the street coming in and renting a room. So I realized that pretty quickly. That, I decided I could like stew in that and start taking drugs and start being really pissed off, or just use it as motivation to make sure this never happens to me again, where somebody else controls my money, my fate, my life. And so when I got to Penn, I was like, okay. I mean, yes, I had, some, kind of stumbling around a little bit the first year or two after school, where I had to try to get it together. But then after that, once I got like the very first real job, I never had to look back ever for any reason. So, and I've never been married. So I literally, no one's ever paid my rent for me. No one's ever, like, as far as an adult living in New York City, I've been extremely independent. That may be harming my dating life, but I've never had to look back to anybody and say, hey, can you pay my light bill? Like, no. I never wanted to be that person that, had to go back and look to public or other resources to help support my life and who I am and who I've become. I've been able to travel to like 20 countries and, China and Japan, all these places multiple times like that. Nobody in my family has that. My grandmother's sister is the one person who got out, and she actually lived in Japan for a bit while her husband was stationed there, but she may be the only person with a passport.
Wow. Now you mentioned that's incredible. You mentioned early on, you said this a few times now, you said, I knew I was on my own. And you had to, and that sort of served as this motivator, right?
Yes.
To make sure that you worked hard, you knew what you needed to do in school. Lord, I wish I had that motivation. I did not. I went the other route. I was like, I don't need anybody. I do my own thing. I follow my own rules, but we won't get into that. My question is that idea of I'm on my own, while it was the strong motivator, got you to the highest places, right? Doing the greatest things. What is the other side of that? Have you seen it? Maybe you mentioned sort of jokingly that it's kind of infiltrated your dating life. Is there any other downside to having this mantra in your head of I'm on my own and I'm independent?
Absolutely. So I had pretty serious surgery 3 years ago. I almost died actually.
Mm,
I had full hysterectomy. They took everything out. So everything you
mm,
think of, they could take out because I had tumors and cysts and all kinds of stuff. But there were two pretty severe complications that happened right after. I had to get 4 blood transfusions. I had to be on a tube from my nose to my stomach for 3 days. It was just crazy. So I was in the hospital 11 days, and it was in the middle of COVID. So it's 2021 when I did that.
wow.
2020. Sorry, I got in 2020. So
Mm,
nobody could really come visit me, 1 or 2 people, but people didn't realize how sick I was. And then when I got home, all these people wanted to do all these things for me. And I'm not used to anybody doing anything. That was the hardest thing in the world, is letting people into my house. But I had to
oh,
have people come in my
wow.
house. It was like
Wow.
crazy. So I got meals every day, two meals a day, a meal train. And what happened was my friend ran the meal train, and it was for 6 weeks, but I was in the hospital for 1 week of it. So those people got knocked out. They were fighting for spots. She's like, I've never seen a meal train full for 6 weeks. Here's the thing, like, people fight for more spots. She couldn't believe it, because I've never let anybody help me. It's the first time in my life
Wow.
that people said I could do something for Lolita. So people
Mm,
ran to do it, and it still moves me to tears. And I have a great story about that. So
mm,
my friend, who's a Penn friend, I will not say his name because he'll kill me. A friend of mine from Penn said, I'm going to be your healthcare proxy. So he comes with me to the hospital at 5 a.m. He says to them before I walk into the hospital, before I go upstairs, he's like, put her in a private room. My insurance did
mm.
not cover a private room. So this
Wow.
again is a God thing to me. I get out of the operation and I'm in the room and I'm like, it looked like the Ritz-Carlton, because Beyonce had her baby in Lenox Hill Hospital. They redid an entire wing. I was there. So there's 10
Wait,
rooms that have a whole set
what?
of nurses. Yes,
You in the
10
Beyonce
rooms.
suite?
Yeah, so there's 10 rooms, right? So she probably had all 10 rooms. I was in one of the 10 rooms. There's 3 nurses just for 10 rooms only, totally separate entrance. The room had looked like a Ritz-Carlton. I said, I don't know who's paying. I remember I don't know who's paying for this, because I didn't know he said that. So I'm supposed
Wow.
to be out of the hospital in 2 days. The second day, I passed out on the bathroom floor, and then they realized that I was losing blood, all this crazy stuff.
Mm.
So I'm there for 11 days instead of 2. So I get a call from him this day 6. He's like, yeah, so I'm the one that put you in there, and I was going to pay for it myself, but now it's 6 days. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. But wait, the story gets better. He's like, oh, never mind. He hangs up the phone. I get home. I'm there 11 nights. This gigantic orchid comes to deliver to me. He's like, okay, so we know that you're too cheap to pay for this yourself. We decided to pay for your room. He called classmates. 10 of my Penn classmates paid for that room.
Wow.
The insurance paid for everything but the room. My classmates from Penn paid for that room. All I'm going to say is that my entire hospital stay was $200,000. I have no idea how much of it was the room. Probably my guess is 40 or 50,000. They just paid it.
Wow.
So the goodwill that I
Lolita.
have brought into my life, and helping other people and visiting with them, and just trying to be a good friend and be a good person and not carry around resentment, caused that to happen.
Wow. Incredible.
And they
It
didn't
took
want
a
to be thanked.
village.
They didn't want to hear about it. And one of them I'm not going to say who it is, but one of my classmates is a very famous person whose mother was a famous person who died because of hospital malfeasance. Apparently, she called up the hospital, was like, my mom died for some BS, and my friend is not going to die from this. So all of a sudden, I'd wake up, didn't know this. The head of surgery came, 8 people standing there. I didn't know any of this had happened. So she called up, because it was Labor Day weekend. She called up. My surgeon came back from vacation. Like, it was all kinds of stuff happened when I was in the bed sleep, because I put out
Wow.
there that I want to be there for other people. So that's why I don't hold resentments, because all they do is stop you. You stop yourself permanently. There's a saying that my friend said, others can stop you temporarily, but only you can stop yourself permanently. And I'm determined not to stop myself permanently, and to just let go of that anger and be like who I am now. And even that relative, unfortunately, is very ill now, has cancer, who we didn't communicate well. So I've decided I'm going to try to, make that right, and at least, be nice, even though they haven't really got an apology, but at least, understand that life is short. There's only 2
Yeah.
of them left out of the 13, and she's one of them. And
Wow.
so, I can't carry that to the grave. Like, I'm still mad at you for not giving me money for my college application. I need to just
Yeah.
kind of move on and say, you know what? I've done fine. I'm okay.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Oof. Other people can stop you temporarily. Only you can stop yourself permanently. I want to make sure
yes.
I use that correctly. I'm definitely going
Yes,
to use that one. Keep
yes.
that one in the chamber.
Powerful, right?
Oh, so powerful. That I think I'm learning I need to be nicer to people.
Yeah.
What a powerful story. Tell me about the family side. So you alluded to this relationship that wasn't so strong, uh, maybe not great communication, not a lot of support on the school level, but not holding resentment. What was it like on a larger level? I know you said that folks, when you were growing up, said you wanted to be white. You wanted to, be better than folks and whatnot. Talk to us a little bit about that dynamic. What was it like? Not only are you living with family members who are not your parents, but there's also a lot of judgment being thrown your way. You're not getting the support you need. Talk to us about what that was like and how you got through it.
I think another part of it is that my family was part of the Great Migration. So they had grown up in all Black atmospheres. And even though they moved into towns and places that were, only 30% Black, they were still living sort of the Black existence because our towns were redlined. So everybody lived in the Black sections of their towns. And because I was bused, I was the first generation that had actually gone to elementary school and grown up around white kids. So all of that resulted in my very first official boyfriend being white. He was Portuguese from the Ironbound section of Newark. So he didn't consider himself white, but, he looked like green-eyed, dirty blonde hair white guy. And when he came to pick me up the first time, my uncle slammed the door in his face. And he then goes, well, the only thing that they want from you. I said, but that's what the Black kids want too. Like, what do you say? So they tried to convince me that I was having a problem. So not everybody, but certain people in my family really had a problem with white people. And so I'm like, you live in a town that's like over half white. So I don't understand that. So that was hard for me because as I said, I was bused in kindergarten. It was first grade. So from first grade on, there was like 5 Black kids and usually 15 white kids in the classes. So I was used to being around that because all the smart classes, because we were tracked, were almost entirely white. So I was very comfortable around white people, particularly Jewish people. And that was very different experience from my family. So some people in my family were extremely prejudiced against white people, against people who have Indian background. And that was hard for me to be around because I'm like, you can't call somebody a dothead. That's not okay. Like, I don't want to hear that. So I heard all kinds of crazy stuff. And so, sort of try to tune out that noise, but still be an okay kid. And I was like, after I became an adult, I was like, I can choose to not be around this anymore. I can actually make a choice. And so some things happened in my early 20s, like, you know what? I'm out. So I just stopped talking to anybody in my family for about 10 years because I was like, I need that to grow, not be pulled back. I had an aunt who called me Hollywood, like making fun of me because I had all these opportunities to do all these really interesting things as a high schooler. And I recognize now how toxic that was to be said to me, or stay out of the sun or you're going to get black because I'm one of the darker people in my family. Or you got thick legs because everybody else is skinny or at least, taller or whatever. Like all these things that were said. I'm like, I'm 15, I'm 12. Like, what are you saying? And I realize now how corrosive that was.
Yeah.
And so when I became in my early 20s, I had so much anger and just like mad about these things. I'm like, you know what? I just need to not be around it. And I'm going to choose, I'm going to have a family of choosing. There's a family of origin, a blood family, and a family of choosing. Yes. And so when people ask me about family, I'm like, my family are the people who are there at 3 a.m. when I call them, they don't ask why, they don't give me a hard time, and they just show up. And most of those people, in fact, 9 out of 10 of those people are not going to be my blood relatives. And I'm fine with that.
Yes.
A lot of people are not, but they don't understand it because they had somebody who that person was their concern. I've never been anybody's main concern, ever.
Yes.
Ever. Like if something's going on, it's between me and their kid or me and their whoever, they're going to pick the whoever and say, I'll get back to you. So if that's going to be the case, then you're not really, I don't have to consider you first.
Yeah.
I'm not first for you. Why do you expect me to be first? Or why do you expect me to have you as first for me? And so I've been struggling with that through my life because I have a relative left who's like, well, I consider you like my daughter. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not your daughter. And there was a particular time in life where there was a choice to be made and you made a different choice. And that was kind of like the breaking point for me. I'm like, okay, that's the way it is. Cool. I'll figure it out myself.
I love the family of origin versus the family of choosing. When my husband and I first started dating, I'm also a fellow orphan, as I think you know, and I have huge family, right? A huge family of choosing, right? And in the beginning, he he thought it was just like this facade, these like superficial, like, popularity contest kind of thing, like Facebook friends type of situations. Cause, I would have people over and be like, oh, my best friend's coming over. My other best friend's coming over. And my sister is coming over and my cousins and all these people, none of them were blood relatives.
Right.
And he would be like very confused because he's come from a huge family. And it took a while for me to actually convince him. And I couldn't convince him. He had to see it, right? Because I would say like, no, you don't understand. These people have been there for me for years. This person took me on vacations. This other person took me for holidays. And it wasn't until like 5 years in that he was like, oh, this really is your family. Now I get it. And these are the aunties and uncles to my kids now. These are the Christmas presents and birthday presents and coming over, flying to Atlanta to help me out, right? And it takes a while for people to get that, but it's a real source of support.
I think what's happened for me also is that friends that I've had for decades now, when we were younger, they were still very tied to their families of origin, so they didn't understand why I was connected to them. Because the connections have gotten stronger now that they got away from their parents. But a lot of times what's interesting is that the parents would sense in me, even if I didn't tell them, like, I like her. So sometimes I would have relationships outside of the people with their parents. There's a friend of mine now from Penn, I'm not going to mention his name, but his mom died about 8 years ago or so, maybe 9 years ago. But she and I would just she's also was very involved with Penn. So I knew her separately from her son, and she and I would just have phone conversations outside of him. Beautiful. And she's like, and she said, can you help my son get more involved with Penn? Because he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And so it's just interesting that she considered me like almost like another daughter. And that meant a lot to me. And he and I still talk about the bond that I had with his mother. And I have a couple of friends like that where I hang out with their mom or their dad without them. And it's not like I'm looking for them to be that for me. It's just, I think I always gravitated toward adults because maybe I didn't have the right adults in my life. So like, I want to learn from people who are older than me. I never want to shunt them to the side because I think a good relationship with somebody older is very valuable because I actually never really felt like I had it. So I'm always much more maybe tolerant and open to having those types of conversations than some other folks are.
That's powerful. Now, you're 14, 12, 10 years old, and you're hearing these things from your family. You want to be white, or you're not doing the right thing, or you're slamming the door in your poor boyfriend's face. Now, I know in retrospect, we can agree it was harmful. It was toxic. It wasn't okay. In the moment, though, I have to imagine there's nothing more than you want than to have your family support and loving you, right? Especially when you haven't had parents, when you haven't had folks there for you. Were there moments along the way when you were like, maybe I shouldn't be dating a white guy. Maybe I shouldn't be going after school. Maybe I shouldn't, I should be looking this way and not that way. Was that temptation ever there for you?
No. And I know that sounds false, but as I said, that thing with me, with God was so strong that I knew I couldn't waver from it, even if they were telling me other things, because I was so different, even as a little kid, that I knew my stuff was different. Like I knew that my path was not going to be their path. I just didn't know how it was going to turn out. My uncle, the cousin of my aunts and uncles, he's now since passed away because he's much older. He took me to, now this is babysitting, took me to the racetrack, babysitting.
Nice.
I'm 9 years old. You're supposed to be 12. And I looked like I was probably 6, right? Because I was like a small kid. So the woman, and he told this story for 50 years. The woman was like, okay, if you're 12 years old, how old are you? Or when is your birthday? And I said, 8/22, 1964. And he was like, what? Like I did the math that fast? Just that fast. He told that story for 50 years. So like, I was that kid. Like, so I memorized all the birth dates of all my aunts and uncles because math to me is not a language. But when numbers connect to a person, I can get it. But like, it just came out of nowhere because not like anybody taught me that. I came out of the womb like that. So I was already an other, even when I was a little kid, is what my point is. So it was easy to other me even more after. So because I already knew I was different from my cousins, who some of them even gave me a hard time, I was like, all right, I'm just going to read my book. Like I thankfully was, self-aware enough to be like, I don't want to be like them. So if they're going to give me a hard time about it, I'll just stop talking. So I very rarely talked in my family. They considered me as like an introvert. And then all of a sudden here I am singing on stages around the world and Carnegie Hall and all the, like that's a side they never saw because I'm like, well, there was no point because nobody was going to be cool with it. So why bother? So I just
Mm,
like nobody went to field hockey games. Nobody went to my concerts. They didn't do any of that stuff. So I was in college. In college, people started coming to my stuff. But high school, not one person ever came to any of that stuff.
mm. Wow.
So
What are the parts of that time that people around you would have never known that you were going through? What are the things that nobody knows about?
um, I think the trauma of when my grandmother died, because it was their mother, right? So it was, they were traumatized. But I'm living with her now, right? So like I'm being uprooted from where I live. And
Mm,
yes, she was her mother, but yes, I grew up with her for 15 years. So it's like the same, they weren't recognizing in me that it was basically the same role in a
mm,
way because she was considered like a surrogate, like my mother. So that was not acknowledged for me at all. It's like I just happened to be there on the side, like, whatever pain you're dealing with, it's your problem, kind of
mm,
thing.
mm.
So,
So folks didn't know that there was a lot of pain there,
right.
even though, yeah. I guess from the outside in, it sounds maybe like to people, it was just like accomplishments, 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 right? Sports and Yale and
Yeah.
Penn and this and that.
Yeah.
But there was also the other side of it. Can you tell us more about the other side, the painful side of I am on my own?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I, my people who were my friends noticed I never cried. I was like, I can't, what am I going to do? I can't show anything. And then we were having band practice one day. I'll never forget it. And I remember my best male friend, who since unfortunately passed away from cancer, was sitting in front of him. I'm like, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And I just start bawling, holding my
Mm,
tenor sax, sitting in like shorts, and like just it all hit me at once. Like, what am I going to do?
yeah.
What am I going to do? How am I going to live? How am I going to survive? Like, I just remember
Mm,
being freaked out by the whole thing. I'm 15 years old. And I like
mm,
clearly the one person I knew my entire existence that, was charged with taking care of me was gone. And everybody else is
mm,
fighting and crying and like caring about themselves and not thinking about what about her? Like, oh, well, who should she live
mm,
with? It's like I feel like it was the last thing considered. Like, okay, I don't have
mm,
anybody. I don't have one
yeah.
person that's like, hey, we need to make sure she's okay.
Mm.
In fact, one of my uncles, the same uncle who slammed the door, was like, if you visited her more, maybe she'd have the will to live. I'm like, you're blaming me because she's still
Oh
conscious?
goodness.
Like, yeah, yeah, look, I'm not going to get into every single thing that was said, but some pretty outrageous things happened. And, people were of their time. So that's the way I always looked at it at the time. Like, this person used to have to wait for other people who are white to cut him in line, and then he could finally be last in line. So he's still pissed and taking it out on me. But it's like,
Mm,
I'm living a different life than you are. Living in the North, in a town that's white. I'm not. I'm not you. And
right.
he couldn't separate that. So I had
Mm,
a lot of people said things to me. In retrospect, they probably realized they were not great, but they're never going to apologize. So I have to get past the fact that I'm not going to get those apologies. I just have to make sure that I can move on and not do the same things to other people that were done to me.
mm. So powerful, the resilience and your ability to kind of stay so focused on your plan and not hold that resentment. I think I definitely have worked through a lot of my own resentments from my childhood to this day, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a therapist for the most part on and off for over 30 years just to make sure that like I don't lose myself because
Yeah.
there's been so much pain and there has been so much resentment. So I am very much in awe, inspired by that attitude. Are there things that you still carry with you or you still have to work through having been on your own for so long?
Yeah, because I don't like to let people in and I don't like to tell people when something's wrong.
Mm,
And as I said, the operation made it where I had no choice in that, but I have parts of my life where I have a choice and don't do that. And like the turtle with the shell, right? You take the stick and poke
yeah,
it, and then you poke in the underbelly. It's like nice and soft, but the shell is hard. You cannot penetrate that shell. And I
yeah,
recognize that some people I need to open it up a crack
yeah.
who've been around me and close enough to me for me to be able to trust them. And I have lots of trust issues, I think is what it is.
Mm. I had a mentor once tell me when you let people help you, it's a gift to them. And
Yes.
when
Yes.
all you do
And I
is help
saw that. Yeah.
others, it's
Yeah.
almost selfish. And I never,
Yeah. And I
I
saw
didn't get
that when I was
that.
sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a gift. And how do you now? I mean, you're completely successful, right? Like you said, you've traveled the world, Asia, Australia, South Africa. I mean, right? That's my goal. That's my goal, is to get there. You're completely financially independent. You're in Manhattan, right? You've been there for a long time now, in a fancy neighborhood, fancy, but right, like these are your achievements. You are a member of the Order of the British Empire. Hello, I need a separate episode just for that, because I really want to understand.
It's a crazy
that.
story too. It's kind of cool.
I want that story in a minute, but my question is: you have all these accolades, you have all this success. How do you work through these moments that you're or these hangups that you have around not letting people in, these trust issues? Like, what does your healing look like now when you've met the goals of 12-year-old Lolita, right? Who said, I gotta get out of here and I'm gonna let God help me through it. How do you work through it now when you've checked all the boxes already?
Well, I think for me, I recognize now I need to turn to my personal life, which I shouldn't say always, lots of time I put that the back burner, like making time to spend time with friends who matter. And one great example is happening in the month of May. I used to always say no to destinations, anything. I was like, I don't have time. I'm not trying to spend $2,000 to go to your wedding. Like, I'll give you a gift, right? So I got 2 invites this month. One is a person I lived with during part of my time at Penn. His wife is turning a particular age, and the party's in St. Thomas. I'm like, you know what? I'm going. And now am I going? There's another classmate of mine who also got invited, and we're staying for a week.
Oh, love it.
And then Walt Frazier is in my class. He lives in St. Croix. He's coming over. Another friend in our class lives in St. Thomas. So like, we're making it a thing. I would never have said yes to that. But I'm making it a week. I'm hanging out with my people. And then another one is a friend who, very good friends. I was in his wedding. He's turning 50 and his wife is doing a surprise party in New Orleans. And I'm like, I definitely would have said no to that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to NOLA. And so God made it that my friend who lives in NOLA in a great apartment, she's like, I'm not going to be there. I'm giving you the keys. So I got a free place to stay. Last week at a jazz fest. It's going to be amazing. I would have said no to both those things. I promise you, before even last year. But I'm like, you know what? Tomorrow's not promised. People are dying. I have classmates who have died in the last few years. And, so when people say these things, I need to say yes and just enjoy it for what it is. Time with people, time with myself on the beach with an umbrella and a drink. I mean, I don't do that. So it's time. So that's the for me, the healing is like being kind to myself and not feeling I have to be driven every single second. I mean, I've been blessed to be able to teach at Penn next semester, which I still can't believe, because I'm like, I barely got out of the school. They tried to kill me. Engineering, they literally tried to flunk us out. And they're asking me to teach. I don't have a grad degree. They're like, we don't care. You are the practitioner that kids want to hear from. Everybody wants to be in climate. You've done the stuff they want to do. I haven't even done it. I mean, the professors, like, we're theoreticians, we're teachers. You actually did it. So you need to be teaching. And so here I am teaching in the same classroom that, Physics 151, they tried to fail me out. Here I am. So,
full circle. That's beautiful. Do you wish you would have started sooner? Like doing those destination NOLAs and destination St. Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, because I did them by myself, right? So between I didn't say this before, but between 27 and 40, I said, I got my first passport at 27. I'm like, I'm going to spend every bonus until the age of 40. I didn't work in mayor's office that long. I left at 37, but every bonus I get between now and 40, I'm going to use it to travel the world.
Nice.
So, and I had goals to go to Australia. And I've been there twice. I had goals to go to all these countries as a single person. I said, I'm going to go by myself. I'm not going to go with other people. I need to experience it as a Black woman, so I know that I'm not at the bottom. Right? You go to other countries, they're like, we don't have a problem with Black people. I'm like, you don't? Like, I'm so used to us being the problem that I wanted to see what it was like to not be that automatic bottom person. And so I'm glad I got that experience. I'm glad I did that. I don't miss for a day that I didn't put that money in the bank, because you can always make more money, but you can't always have more time.
I think one thing that I always think about as growing up and going through all the stuff, right? And folks always used to call me strong, right? And everybody's like, oh, so amazed. Oh, she's been through so much. Oh, you're so strong. Oh my gosh. Right. And honestly, and I would say thank you, and I would smile and I'd say the right things. And inside it, I hated it. I hated it. I resented everybody who used to call me strong, because I felt like I had no choice, right? Like it was either be strong or die, or I don't know, become an addict, or, There wasn't any other choice. Did you ever go through that? And what were you called, and what are the sort of feelings behind it?
Well, it's interesting because I have a lot of male friends, and I know I've had male friends who I know were interested in me, did nothing about it. And so it would come out later, it's like, well, you're so strong, you're so this, like you don't need anybody. It's like not about needing or not needing. I mean, everybody wants to have love and everybody wants to have
Yes.
companionship. So because I'm not dependent on you to pay bills or to do certain things that that's what you want. So
Mm,
that was hard to hear. In fact, one
yeah.
person, we almost got married and then didn't. It was a crazy situation, but there was another person involved, and it was like, this person or that person is like, well, this person will fall apart if I say I'm leaving. You're gonna be okay. I'm like, that's what you base your stuff on. So this has been
Yikes.
said to me in really crazy situations more than
It's kind of
once, and
weird.
it's hard to hear because like, so you want a weak person, or do you just think that I don't need anybody? Like, I don't understand where that's coming from. Why people assume because of how I am at work to survive
Yeah.
and thrive at work that I'm the same way personally or at home.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you separate that I can be two? There's duality here, and I
Yeah.
don't have to be not the same all the time.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah.
I'm realizing maybe in some of my friendship situations to be a little bit more vulnerable in those because people are reading me wrong because of that.
Yes. Yes. But also, like, why do people need to be needed so badly that you can't be in a
Right.
relationship with somebody that doesn't like need you to survive? That's also
Right.
toxic.
Right. Agreed. So agreed. So which means that those people probably were not people I should be with anyway, but it's hard to
Right.
hear it. Even if it's the wrong person, it's
Of,
hard to hear
of
somebody say that
course.
about you. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, well,
Oh
you're
yeah.
fine. You don't need me. Like, oh, so like because I can pay my bills and I'm not asking you for a car. What?
Yeah. 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 No, I remember getting to an argument with my sorority sisters. And this was in college. There was some argument, some fight. I don't know what it was. And all of my line sisters went and helped out my other line sister. And they're, oh, are you okay? Is everything all right? And nobody came to me. And I think the argument was between me and her. So I can't remember the details, but I just remember afterward, somebody finally checked in on me, like, I don't know, a few hours later, like, hey, everything okay with you? I'm like, yeah. Nobody asked me if I was fine. Nobody asked me if I was, and they're like, yeah, but you're so strong. You're Cecy. Like, we all know that you were going to be fine. I was like, yeah, but I'm not fine. Right. And like, nobody's checking on me, and that's painful. And from that
Yeah.
moment, everything shifted, and they always check on me, and they've been phenomenal. Shout out to my line sisters, but it's a hard title to sort of, live up to.
Right.
And oftentimes just creates these results that are not very loving and not very
Right.
supportive.
Right.
Yeah. What advice do you have for folks who might be listening, who are young folks who are just entering college or being told maybe that they're trying to be white, or maybe they don't have parents, or, who are navigating similar spaces? Any tips for their journey?
Don't let the unrealized dreams of other people around you, including your family, change or affect your own.
Mm, you got to say that again. That was good.
Don't let the unrealized dreams of the people around you, and some of them may be your family, change or affect your own.
Mm,
Because often advice that you are given is from the viewpoint of the person giving it and not from the viewpoint of you who needs to hear it.
yes.
So somebody tells you you shouldn't go away to college. You need to go to college close by. That's not for them. I mean, that's not for you. That's for them. Either they want you nearby, or maybe you're achieving something they can't achieve. I was told by many people there was no way I should go to Penn, that I should go to Rutgers. Got a full ride. I'm like, why am I going to go to school 5 minutes from my house? It defeats the purpose of me going away to college.
Yep.
So to me, it wasn't even a consideration. I'm like, you're not giving me any money to go to college, so you have no say in where I go to college. And so that had to shut everybody up. I'm paying for it myself through grants and loans. So guess what? I'm going to where I want to go. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll say that to anybody who asks. I'm glad I turned down Yale. I'm glad I turned down Columbia. Penn was the school for me. And I knew that when I applied.
Yeah. That's why I didn't go to Columbia, because it was down the street. I was like, no, thank you.
I got to go away to college. And so, But so other people give you advice that is pertinent to them.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with you. So always think about who's saying things to you and why they're saying them when you consider their advice as a younger person. Now, older, then you know a little bit more about life. But when I was younger, I knew, I was like, well, you're saying that because you didn't even get to go to college. So of course you don't even know I knew when people didn't know what they were talking about and give me advice. So that's why I hate to say this, but I basically dismissed anything my family said about college because I never went to college. So I'm like, I can't listen to you. So you're saying go to Yale. I'm like, I've never visited Yale. Why would I go to a school I've never visited? Like, so all these things that came in, people were just saying what they thought was right, but I knew it was not from an informed place, so I could dismiss it. So that's the first advice I'd say is the dreams. The second is this is not all there is. No matter how crazy the situation you're in right now, this is not all there is. It's not the end. You can remake yourself. I survived 9/11. Person I went down the stairs with died. And my life has gone on the up and up and up since then. That was not the end. That was the end of the beginning.
So just like one or two more questions. Is that okay?
Yep.
So what were your strategies, being the first to go to college, go to like an Ivy League institution? Life is different, right? Everybody comes in sort of with the social capital of even how to decorate a dorm room, how to choose classes, what activities to pick. Sorry. Yeah. How did you navigate that world and even afterward, the career world and, housing and jobs and figuring life out when you still had none of the sort of parental figures that normally might guide a person through those firsts of just becoming an adult? What are the strategies? Were you faking it till you made it? Were you just like, I don't know, I'm just going to dive in head first? How did you do that?
When I got to Penn, I recognized that I wanted to sort of take it all in because I was finally in an atmosphere where everybody was smart, or almost everybody was smart. My high school situation, that was not the case, which is why I got teased, bullied, all these things. But I was like, okay, everybody here at baseline is smart. So I'm not going to be teased for that. So let me try to be more social. I was not social like that in high school. So when I got to college, I actually became very social because I was one of the best singers on campus at the time. So I was in an a cappella group and in the gospel choir, and I ended up in a band that played all the fraternities. So we played all the main fraternities. We did spring fling. We had gigs downtown, and I was the diva of the band. And so through that, I got to know lots of people, particularly all the presidents of all the fraternities. And I was in that band my junior year. So my senior year, I got into all of the fraternities for free and got to know lots of people through that. And also I wrote for the school paper. So my voice actually was something that people wanted to hear and celebrate it, which was my voice was always quieted or tamped down before that. So writing for the school paper as a junior also changed my life because back then everybody read the DP. That was like the main way you got news. So 10,000 people a day, were reading that, which means every other Wednesday, people like, what Lolita saying now? My column was very well-known, sometimes controversial. So those two things made me very well-known on campus. So my senior year, I got into Friars. And Friars is like a senior fraternity at Penn, for those who are listening. And they only take campus leaders. So it's 48 people out of a class of 2,500. And I was one of the 48.
Wow.
There were 3 of us who were Black females. I think we had 2 Black guys, 3 Black females, and the rest. So I was one of 5 Black people out of the 180 Black people in the class to be chosen for this. It was a big deal. And so through being in all these things, I got to know lots and lots of people on campus, Black, white, purple. It was the first time I recognized that not all white people like each other. Penn in the 80s was an interesting place where there's a significant Jewish community, and then there was a community that was not Jewish. And then I would hear things. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know any of this existed. So, I learned a lot through my time at Penn, which kind of dovetailed with my time in high school, being around a significant Jewish population. So I got in the work world. I was prepared to how to deal with white people, how to talk to them, how to be partners with them in certain things. And I used my time at Penn to hone those skills. And I did not do this on purpose, but it turns out that a lot of my friends from Penn happen to be of sort of the wealthier group. So people were in St. A, St. E's, the Castle, Theta, Kappa Alpha Theta, etc. So a lot of those are my contemporaries I spend a lot of time with now. And they're like CEO of this, president of that, whatever. Wow. So, I have all these relationships with these great people. I'm not friends with them because of that. But my point is, I learned how to navigate those spaces really early because they obviously were acting in those ways when they were at college because their parents were those things, a lot of them.
Right.
So it was very easy for me when I got into Morgan Stanley. I'm like, all right, if I'm on this Morgan Stanley trip where there's 1,000 people literally and 5 of us are Black, I'm okay. I'm not going to golf, but I'll go do this thing, or I know how to do that thing. Like I could slide in and do those things, because also a couple of things I used to do is I don't like golf, but I knew I needed to be able to be conversant about it. So I'd read the sports page on Monday to see who won the things that happened on the weekend and be able to talk about it. Also, I love football. And so there's a pool, a firm-wide pool, 55 people in it, different teams. And I was in first place for like 8 weeks. And they're like, who's picking for you? I'm like, I'm picking for myself. What are you talking about? So then I became friends with the head trader of the entire firm. He's like, who are you picking in the Patriots game? Like, so I found ways to infiltrate and be part of things that people didn't expect, just because I could watch from the side and see what was important to them.
Yeah.
Because then you get to do what's important to you after you do what's important to them.
So I'm hearing connection, community, learning, observing,
right,
as sort of the key tools. Do you still do that?
Don't make yourself an outsider. If there's a way you can come in with the thing you bring to the table, come in. Don't be afraid to come in. Don't sit on the outside. If you know, like if I knew about football, why would I not be in the pool? Because clearly I knew what I was talking about, because I was on top for 8 weeks. And came in second out of 55 teams. So I knew I could do that. I'm like, I'm going to jump in. And I knew what I was talking about.
Don't make yourself the outsider. I like that. Do you still do that? Do you feel like it's necessary anymore? Do you feel like you're in a place where you don't feel like the first anymore? You have to try all these strategies.
The irony is that people look at me as the ultimate insider, and I laugh about that because I don't think I am, but they're like, you work for a British company. Everybody except for like 10 people in the company are British. You're the only one that has an MO or CBE. You're the Black American. It's a bunch of British guys. You're the Black American and you have it.
Wow.
That's crazy. Think about that. So like I'm not only inside, sometimes I'm more inside than the people who should be inside.
Right.
So I don't really worry about it anymore.
I love that. So let's talk about that. And I think we can, as we wrap this up, you were awarded the Member of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. And that's something that very few Americans receive, right? It's one of the highest honors. How in the world did it happen? Talk to us about that. And
sure. So this is advice I give to people, young people all the time. Do something outside of work that makes you happy, that has nothing to do with your job. And so I've continued to do that my entire career from day one. I've mentored kids in Harlem. I've done all sorts of things. So I've been a board chair 7 times or president of organizations. And 2 of them are really how I got this award. So one is called the British American Project, where you get in as a delegate between the ages of 28 and about 42. You stay one the rest of your life, but you get in at that point. It's really a leadership organization for people in the US and in the UK. So I became the US chair of that organization. And then I am also was the head of the advisory board later on of the organization in the US side. There's another organization called the Royal Society for Arts. Benjamin Franklin actually was a fellow. So was Charles Darwin. Many celebrated people from the US and the UK. And I was the US chair of that organization for 3 years. And so I knew all the British consuls general. I knew all the ambassadors, both to the UN and to the United States. And then the third thing is that every person who comes in as a consul general in New York, I worked for the mayor's office for quite some time. I was their political link to tell them, hey, you should think about talking with this community. Maybe you should have this type of event, et cetera, just giving the sort of political landscape locally. So pretty much most people who were posted in the US at least knew my name because of those 3 things. Yeah. And that was consistent over 20 years. I was doing some form of those activities. And so I got nominated. It's like the MacArthur Genius Award. You don't know you're nominated for it until you actually were told you got it. And so apparently I was nominated in 2018 or 19 by the Deputy Consul General in New York at the time. And then I got it in 2021. So that's how I got it. So it's all stuff with British UK relations, basically. I'm still involved in that stuff now. And the irony is that I work for British companies, so it hasn't ever really stopped.
Amazing. Well, now, were you able to meet or see Queen Elizabeth before she passed?
No, what happens is that when you're American, you get it in America. And so Princess Anne, it was delayed several times because of COVID. So Princess Anne came to New York and gave it to the 8 people who got the levels over the last
Wow.
2 years. So that was last October that Princess Anne came over and gave it to us.
Amazing. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
You are definitely the only person I've ever met with the MBE. So I'm very excited for you and excited to know you.
I've been told that I may be the only Black female American to get this within 30 years. I know another Black male who has it, and he's got his a while ago. And he said, "Yeah, I don't remember anybody American
Wow.
getting it who's Black female." So,
Oh my gosh. Are they going to make a movie about you at some point? Are you in
I'm going to write the
talks?
book when I'm retired, and because then I can name names.
Can't wait. I can't wait. I want one of the first copies.
Yeah.
Lolita, it's so nice to connect. I feel like I could ask you 10,000 more questions, but I know that time escapes us. But I do want to say that I'm taking so much away from today, as also a first in my family to do many things, and just to kind of the importance of connection, the importance of community, the importance of making time. I really appreciate you naming that out loud. I think it's so easy to just fall into the trap of like, gotta keep achieving. So I appreciate you naming this to like take the time to go out and connect with friends and spend time with people. I also appreciate the spiritual shout out to God. And I love when you said, I'm going to get you out, but you got to listen. I feel like I need that as a tattoo somewhere just to remember to listen. There's so many signals and signs as a spiritual person myself. I feel like this all over. I'm sure that God is trying to send us signs all the time. And we're just so focused on what's in front of us that we just don't see it.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. That's what I'm taking away from our brief conversation. But I thank you so much for just sharing all these words and your story. Really powerful one.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And for our folks listening, if there's something that stayed with you today or spoke to you or moved you, I'd love for you to share it with us on social media. Lolita, is there any social media you'd like to share? Any shout outs if anybody wants to connect with you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram as Nerd Diva.
Love that. Nerd Diva.
Yeah. So I'll just leave that one, and because I tend to not do Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn as well with my name. It looks just like me. So you can't see me, but I wear glasses. You'll see glasses and a red blazer.
Love that. Love that. And it's Madam Sings a Lot, did you call it?
Dame
Sings a lot.
Like Sir Mix-a-Lot, Dame Sings a Lot.
I love it. I love it. So be sure to follow Nerd Diva in addition to First in the Fam on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I guess one day I got to get onto TikTok, but that's gonna take me some time. And please share this episode and this podcast with anybody that you think might be interested, or maybe they were first in the fam. We'd like to reach even more people who, like you, can relate to these complexities, to the joys, to the celebration and the pain of being the first. So as always, friends, make sure that you're connecting with each other and following that gut feeling. It might be a signal from God, like Lolita said, who might just be saying, I'm going to get you out, but you got to listen. Lolita, thank you so much for sharing your story today, for being so open and vulnerable and teaching us so much. I really appreciate your time.
Great. Bye.
All righty. Bye, everybody.